So today we are going to continue our series on gratitude. Actually, today is the day we finish up our series on gratitude. And I'm taking a little bit of a different angle at it today. We're going to talk a little bit about meaning. We're going to talk about what meaning we ascribe to it, what we think of when we think of being thankful. But what I'd like to do first is just take a minute and have a 5-minute meditation and just put ourselves in the place where we're going to start just thinking about it. So I invite you to close your eyes and take a breath. And just relax in your seat. If there's any stress in any part of your body, just bring your consciousness to that area and just breathe it out. As we take a deep breath, we breathe life in. We breathe peace out. We just breathe in deep and calming and cleansing breaths that wash through us and calm us and free us and warm us. And as you continue to breathe, just bring your attention down to your heart space. And let the warmth and the light of your breath just open it like a flower. Feel yourself warming, the blood flowing, the light spreading. And as you do, just sit in the energy of thankfulness. Breathe peace. Breathe light. Breathe joy. And breathe gratitude. As the light spreads, sit with the thought of gratitude for yourself, kindness for yourself, loving acceptance of yourself, releasing judgment and fear, and all those walls we build that limit us. Just sit with unconditional friendliness toward yourself, all of you. And as you continue to breathe, let that energy spread to the beloved sitting next to you and the beloved beyond. Feel that thankfulness for each other, for the energy that goes back and forth and animates and enlivens each of us, for the love and the support and the unconditional kindness we give each other. Or that if we don't, that in every moment we have the choice to give each other. Sit with thankfulness for the ties that link us strongly and irrevocably together. Our humanity, our hopes, our dreams, our vision. We are blessed to be surrounded by so many who love us and support us and are there, who continue to show up as we show up for them. And as we come back to this space, and as you bring your energy from your heart space back to your mind, let's go forward in that energy of loving kindness toward ourselves, of forgiveness toward ourselves, and connection and love toward each other. And so it is. And so we say, Amen. Okay, that was a teaser. I've now told you what my talk is about. Oh well, let's go have coffee. No. So did everybody have a good Thanksgiving?
Yes.
Excellent. Catherine, you had a good Thanksgiving? I was there! Yes, Catherine made stuffing. She was so proud of herself. Thank you. You did a wonderful job.
Gravy.
And you made gravy. Yes, it was way cool. So I hope you all had a good one. So my topic today is what Thanksgiving means to you. And what I do is I want to talk about what Thanksgiving means, what gratitude means, what we make it mean. Because the good news about us, I didn't make sure my mic was on, I was just like, is that we have the choice to give meaning to the events of our lives, to what we're feeling, to the circumstances in which we find each other. So I want to talk today about what that means, because to me, gratitude and thankfulness is all about meaning. So, as I looked back on this year, it struck me that this Thanksgiving was a challenging one. It was challenging for a lot of us, not only for a lot of us in this room, but for a lot of those in this country and in around the world. There are many homes with empty seats this last Thanksgiving due to violence, due to natural disasters, due to all those things we read about on the news every day. There's an outfit called the nonprofit Gun Violence Center or Gun Violence Archive that tracks mass shootings in the U.S. And they say that in 2017 there were 307 mass shootings as of November 5th, 2017, which was the day of the Sutherland Springs First Baptist shooting in Texas. November 5th was the 310th day of the year. And that means there was almost one mass shooting for every day in 2017 in our country. There were lots of empty chairs at Thanksgiving this year. Now, violence was not limited to the U.S. 2 days ago, I posted on Facebook about the bombing at the Al-Radi Mosque in northern Sinai. Did you all hear about that? 235 Sufis, it was a Sufi mosque, 235 people killed by radicals who wanted to eradicate the heresy of Sufism. Violence and killing done in the name of God. For those who think they don't know anything about Sufism, think of Rumi, that famous Sufi poet born 810 years ago. In 2014, he was the most famous poet in the United States. Sufism is the mystical tradition of Islam. Where would we be without it? I mean, mysticism really is what we're all about. We here teach the perennial wisdom. And the perennial wisdom is the wisdom taught by the mystical traditions of all the different faith traditions. And we would be so much poorer without it. But the fact that it is a wonderful, venerable, insightful tradition doesn't protect it from senseless violence. In the United States, more than 13,000 people have died from gun-related violence so far this year, and nearly 27,000 have been injured. Thursday was a day designated as a national day of Thanksgiving. But what does that mean? How hard is it on a national day of Thanksgiving when we're living in times of such uncertainty? I personally think it is way cool that we have a national holiday devoted to being grateful. I think it is wonderful because we need to be reminded. We need to always be told that there's things in our lives that we need to be grateful for, that we need to be grateful for our lives by themselves. I think it is so cool that we have a national holiday designated for that. In addition, as we talk a little more about what 2017 has brought, let's think of the natural disasters that have happened, not just gun violence. Those were bad enough. This was the year of Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, Katia, Maria. So I decided to see what was happening in Puerto Rico, and I find that in Puerto Rico, 51% of the power grid is generating power, only 51%. And there are thousands who still don't have telecommunications or drinking water. So in times like this, we ask ourselves, what is there to be thankful for when things are so difficult? Now, I'm not giving you these figures in the hope of making you go and run out into traffic. I'm really not. People are coming, oh, we're going to talk about Thanksgiving. That is so great. Well, and Melanie starts talking about gun violence. I do it because in a season of gratitude, in this time of huge challenge and profound uncertainty, what I call the platitudes of gratitude sometimes no longer work. You know, you sit around the Thanksgiving table and people, I'm happy for my health, and now my kids are happy, things are going well. What happens when they're not? How do we find meaning to be grateful when things are not? You say, thank you, God, that I and my family are safe. Thank you, God, that my kids are doing well. What are we really saying when we say that? Thank you, God, that those bullets on November 5th missed me? Really? Is that, I mean, who's saying that? Thank you that fate selected another house to flatten in that hurricane? No. We have to move beyond that. We have to find new meaning to be grateful for. It's true that we may have missed those personal tragedies that occurred to others, but we here know more than we know anything that we are connected, that your loss is my loss, that your tragedy is my tragedy. As British Pakistani novelist Nadim Aslan said, pull a thread here and you'll find it attached to the rest of the world. Pull this thread here and its effects are felt everywhere. We are challenged to find new meaning in a day of gratitude, when the old paradigms, the old platitudes may no longer work. We are challenged to find new reason for thankfulness every day in our world where uncertainty is perhaps the new norm. So where do we go with that? The good news about us is we continue to find meaning. We are just, as human beings, we are wired to find meaning. We are meaning finders. Ever since we first crawled out of the caves and kind of looked around and said, whoa, what is this? We have been compelled to find and seek why we are doing it. What is it all for? We are compelled to come up with a reason to keep going, to find meaning in tragedy, to find meaning in everything that we do. I remember we have studied Viktor Frankel's book, Man's Search for Meaning. Remember we talked about that? He was the survivor of the Nazi death camps. And he went on to found the psychological science of logotherapy, which is therapy based on the premise that you become psychologically healthy when your life has meaning. And what he found, living through those horrible experiences in the Nazi death camps, is that the prisoners who had meaning in their lives, who knew that they were doing it for a reason, are the ones who walked out. And the ones who just gave up, the ones who saw no reason for anything, are the ones who lay down and died. The African Bushmen teach that there are two sorts of hunger. There is physical hunger, and then there is what they call the great hunger, which is the great hunger for meaning. Why am I doing this? And when they can fill that hunger, they know that they belong and that they are content. It's the great hunger that drives us. As Nietzsche wrote, he who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. Don't you find that to be true? He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. It is meaning that gives us hope. It just is. It is meaning that leads us to gratitude. It is meaning that leads us back to life. It's the belief that there is something good that is going to come out of this. The belief that there is a reason I am going through this. We do so much better when we are in times of desperation, when we think there is a reason we are doing it. It's just how we are wired. And we find that reason, and we create those reasons for each other. In the midst of tragedy, how can we be grateful for this event, for this pain, if it makes no sense? I mean, think about that. How can you be grateful for something that makes no sense? And sometimes the old paradigms don't work. God wills it. What? Okay. You know, and that works for a lot of people. But there are others for whom it doesn't work, because they are driven to find an answer for themselves that moves beyond that. I read an article by a guy named Pastor Lee Strobel, who said that several years ago he commissioned a national survey. And the survey was, if you had one question you could ask God, what would it be? Let me ask you. If you had one question you could ask God right now, oh, the bell dings, there's God, what would it be?
Why am I here?
Why am I here?
Why was I born?
Okay, what else?
Is there a point to all this?
There you go! There's a good one. The question that he got most was, why is there suffering? Would that be near the top of anyone's list? Why is there suffering? My wife asked me that question.
Why is there suffering, by the way?
I know! BTW, why is there suffering? My wife asked me that. And to be honest with you, it's the thing that keeps her out of church. Because she asked, why, if God is so good and so omnipotent, is there so much suffering in the world? Why isn't the playing field just a little more level? It's so easy for people to be bad. It's so easy for evil to triumph. Why isn't it at least just as easy for good to climb up that same hill? That's the question. Why is there suffering? What is the meaning in what we go through? One of the things I'm going to do next year, and at this point I just invite your participation. Usually what I do is themes, gratitude, prayer, forgiveness. Next year, my themes are going to be based on questions. Why is there suffering?
Pop quiz?
No, there's no test. That's the good news. There's no test. The only test is that you have to participate in the questions. So, why is there suffering? Why should I live? Why did this happen? Whatever questions you have. So I invite you, just send me in your questions, because that's what we're going to do next year. Every month is going to be based on a question that we all grapple with, that we all deal with, that we are all looking for the answers. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the answers together. Or even if we don't find the answers, we're going to debate the questions. So I think that would be a good way to spend the following year. But we ask ourselves, what is the meaning in things that seem to have no meaning? We are all looking for that roadmap. Traditionally, for example, at Thanksgiving, it is God we thank for our blessings, for abundance, for family, for health. Is all that familiar? Were we all doing that last week? Thank you for all that's on the table. Thank you for all that I have. When God is a bestower of blessings, as He usually is for people in the United States, because we have so much, we are so rich and wealthy and healthy, it is easy, it is natural to say thank you for all that I have. But what when things changed? Can I say thank you to a God who lets my child be murdered? Can I say thank you to a God that let my home be burned to the ground, that let my family be destroyed? This is where our conversations with God sometimes falter. It's where our paradigm sometimes falls apart. So in preparing for today, I came across, and it spoke to me, an article from the New York Times that was called, "After So Much Sadness, What Is There to Be Thankful For?" Did anybody see this article? It's called, "After So Much Sadness, What Is There to Be Thankful For?" I'm like, my God, what a wonderful question. You're exactly right. It tells the story of a lady named Sherry Pomeroy. It tells several stories, but it starts with her, who was the wife of the pastor of Sutherland Springs Baptist Church, where the shooting was on November 5th. For every year, she had prepared a Thanksgiving meal for her congregation. And because it was a small congregation and they got together, and they would have Thanksgiving together and just be together and be grateful. In the past, she enjoyed the help of her daughter Annabelle, who would bake, the article said, her extra fluffy chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah.
So this year, Annabelle is not there. And 24 other people are not there because they were killed in the shooting on November 5th. There were many empty chairs at that church. Ms. Pomeroy said, "There is so much sadness. Not only do you not know how to function in society, you just don't even know what to say to God anymore. You don't know what to say to God anymore. What do you say to a God who in your mind has let the unspeakable loose? When your paradigm is that God is a God of blessing and bounty, what do you say when all this tragedy is visited on you? Perhaps you don't even have the language. Perhaps you don't even have an image of that God that you can begin to understand. But despite being so adrift and despite being so unsure, she got up on Thanksgiving morning and she fixed 10 turkeys with all the trimmings. She said, I just know I'm not going to dishonor them by giving up, because then their lives would be in vain or their deaths would be in vain. What was she doing? She was continuing to look for a reason to get up and go on, and she was not going to dishonor them by letting them down. The article also tells the story of Lance Miller, whose sister Hannah Ehlers was killed in the Las Vegas shooting. He says that Hannah loved preparing a huge Thanksgiving dinner for her kids, and she would invite the whole family over. After 21 years of being in the military, Mr. Miller moved closer to Hannah's family, and he did it several months before she died. He said he's glad they're now to help her family. He says, we're here to help them. He says, I know it's going to be hard. So what does he find? What meaning does he find? He finds it in being there for them, in helping them through the times that are hard. There's another story. The children of Nasa Tonks, who was also killed in the Las Vegas shooting, they were asked how they wanted to spend the Thanksgiving, her 3 sons. And they said to be together. So they sat in the living room. They wore identical t-shirts with her name on the sleeve. And they were together. Her sister, Minda Smith, made the Thanksgiving meal, and over 30 people showed up. Not only family, but people who, through the shooting, were strangers, but who had become family. She made the Thanksgiving dinner for them all. She said, you learn to appreciate the people who surround you so much more. Since the shooting, we've said, you have to find light. You have to find the beauty. It's out there. Darkness is so strong, but light is stronger. Think of that. This is a woman who has just lost a family member, a beloved family member. She's still getting up. She's still making Thanksgiving dinner. She's still inviting people in as family who 3 weeks ago she would have passed on the street as strangers. Think about that. It's things like that, truly, that teach us what we are thankful for. Many felt that even though it was difficult to even contemplate a Thanksgiving holiday, and the article had people who couldn't even get out of bed. They had people, they talked about people, a lady named Reyna Rodriguez, whose father had been shot. She said, I just can't do it. She said, I just can't even get out of bed. There was another family, the O'Connors, I think, who every year, they lived in California, their house was burned in the wildfires. They said every year we had a thankfulness tree. And then their house burned and they had to move in with a set of grandparents. And their 8-year-old son, as the holiday rolled around, said, we haven't put up our thankful tree yet. And the mother said, I just can't do it. She said, I just can't do it. And so there are those who reach up and there are those who are still digging. And who in the fullness of time will reach up. There were those who felt that they just couldn't do a holiday without their loved one. But then there were also those who felt that because of this tragedy, they needed that Thanksgiving even more than ever. Why? To show them that life goes on, that reason persists, that we go on, even in the midst of indescribable pain and loss. Our purpose becomes clear. Their purpose became clear when they could look past it and still reach out a hand to lift up another person. Reaching out that hand lifts us up as well. So where do we find meaning? If all of a sudden we're not sure that we can continue to say, oh, thank God my children are healthy. Oh, thank God my job is secure. Oh, thank God my house is fine. We find meaning in each other because that doesn't go away. We find meaning in the ability to make connections, to express our love and our support and our caring of each other. We find it in relationship. Even if we're not 100% sure that we are up to the job. We celebrate those who celebrate us with all our faults and all our wackiness and all our whatever. People who still think that we are worth being with. People who, even though we're just as strange as we can be, they still take our calls. You know, one of my favorite authors is Anne Lamott, and she says one thing we need to do is to continue to celebrate what she calls exquisite companions, the people who go with us through life, that even though we know that we have all these problems, they still love us anyway. She says that without these exquisite companions, I love this line, she says our lives would just be pathetic. She said it would be like death of a salesman, except with emails and texting. Isn't that great? I know when I die I want to come back as Anne Lamott. But it's these connections, it's these exquisite companions, and that's what we are. We know that in this community. We are exquisite companions to each other. And we give meaning to each other. And we lift each other up when we can't even begin to find the meaning in the tragedies that beset us. It is that. It is relationship and connection and love that leads us to meaning, that leads us to gratitude, that leads us to gratitude for all the things that happen. Why? Because we bear it together, because we see each other through it together. She also writes, sometimes what we hope for is clarity and resolution. Don't we hope for clarity and resolution? How often does that happen? That would be like never. She says what we get instead is strength and poignancy and the strength to go on. And we find that together. It's interesting because as I was reading that article in the New York Times, when people were talking about what got them through, even the profoundly religious ones, they didn't talk about God. They didn't talk about prayer that got them through. What got them through was each other. They found meaning in the ability to connect with each other. And the ones who had more difficulty getting through didn't have that because they felt isolated and they felt alone. So maybe that's the meaning we find in Thanksgiving. Maybe when life is more uncertain than we ever thought it was, maybe that's the meaning we find in each other. When we think maybe we're not as safe and secure as we once thought we were, we focus on connection, on love, on relationship, and we lift each other up. Albert Schweitzer wrote, "At times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us." Don't you find that sometimes your own little light just goes out? And sometimes someone else comes along and just lights it up for you and helps you just go on. Maybe that's the work we do this Thanksgiving. Maybe we just feel grateful for each other. And then we get up and we get to work.
That's what happened to me.
Thank you.